Part 32. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 312. The metal monsters move. Give up Fan-Hafei, who has been surrounded, like the hero Chi-Mu, who is ready to die together with the metal monsters. After that, the metal monsters, with strange red light in their gun barrels, walked quickly towards the direction where the giant mosquito disappeared. Click, click, click. Click, 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 click. At the same time, similar sounds came uniformly from almost all battlefields in this dilapidated city. All the metal monsters are moving. They gave up on their imminent victory. The tens of thousands of metal monsters seemed to have a unified command or a common view. They knew that the biggest enemy now, also the number one enemy, had appeared in front of them. One by one, they took neat steps towards the direction where the fire disappeared, like a creature that only faced a powerful enemy, rushing towards the direction where the giant mosquito was flying. It's not just the battlefield in Shanghai. Around Shanghai City, the metal monsters that attack small villages and human gathering points one after another all appeared after the super huge monster that pierced the sky and appeared like a meteor in the night. They all gave up their attack targets. Go in the direction of the monster's flight and pursue it. For a time, no one knew how many people were saved because of this. In the Shanghai market, Fan-Hafei was still smoking, his cigarette butt had been extinguished, but he was still watching the metal monster go away. It is impossible for this young man to know that the super monster flying in the sky once lived in the same place as him, even for several nights. And everyone at the command post. There are more soldiers on the ground and the general public. These people were saved by this. Even in that gathering point of the people, the figure of a peerless beauty was also among them, watching the flight of the huge mosquito, out of the corner of her eyes. A teardrop appears. Because these people are ahead. It was a metal monster that surrounded them, but these metal monsters that were about to emit red light gave up their attack the moment the huge monster appeared in the sky. Then he turned towards the direction of the giant mosquito's flight and rushed away. This stunningly beautiful woman. Looking at the metal monster going away, a rare smile appeared on his face. If the big mosquito saw it, he might be shocked by her beauty. Ding Limen. So many lives. Whether they have known each other before or not, it is all because of the appearance of the giant mosquito. One by one was saved. But none of the parties involved knew about all this. All he cares about is the safety of his family. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Big mosquito in the sky. Flying proudly. Flying in the air is the most comfortable. The giant mosquito looked at everything under his feet. Looking at the familiar ground. Breathing the familiar air. And fly in the sky with their own wings. All in all made him feel happy physically and mentally. That's right. This supergiant mosquito falling from the sky is none other than Jia Yan. After a day of getting closer, just an hour before, the spacecraft flew through the orbit of the moon. At that time, an unprecedented loud alarm sounded in the aircraft. Jia Yan finally started to slow down, but he almost crashed the huge flying saucer into the Earth's atmosphere because he couldn't grasp the flight inertia of the aircraft. After all, except for the operating lever, he didn't know how to use other things such as auxiliary brakes, so it was reasonable for such a danger to occur. Fortunately, he braked hard and stopped the aircraft in space when it was more than 200 kilometers away from the Earth. To be precise, it is already within the scope of the Earth's gravity and is also the outer layer of the atmosphere. It can be said to be extremely close to the Earth. And the direction of stay is directly above the Huaxia kingdom. Jia Yan soon left the aircraft alone. He had no intention of flying the aircraft to the surface. If it gets too close, even Daphne's aircraft will be forced to leave the Earth by the huge red light of the metal monster. His shabby aircraft will only end up being broken into pieces. He flew out himself, and the scene after that is easy to imagine. Jia Yan controlled his body, flew through the universe, and then flew through the stratosphere, which is about 50 kilometers away from the surface of the Earth. Even in the stratosphere, he did not stop his body at all, flying directly to rub against the atmosphere. The whole body is like a huge burning fire, turning into a meteor and rushing into the Earth. So almost everyone saw the arrogant appearance of this big mosquito. Incomparably domineering, extremely touching. It seems to be announcing that he, the giant mosquito, is coming to the Earth again. Boom boom boom. Jia Yan flapped his wings, but he didn't seem to feel the resistance of the air. The surrounding atmosphere is filled with the sound of him flapping the air, as if the entire Earth has no gravity for him. He even used his brainwave power unconsciously, and sometimes found that he could fly in the air without flapping his wings. Is this feeling really the Earth? Could it be that I am too powerful, so at this moment, I can't even feel the constraints of gravity? Jia Yan flew quickly towards the small mountain village more than 100 kilometers away from Shanghai. His speed is no longer as simple as before. Now he is just flying slowly, because during this period, he still needs to work hard to adapt to his own flying method. After all, he has not experienced air flying for several months, and he has experienced a mutation in the universe, so returning to Earth again will take some time for him to adapt. But his speed still unknowingly exceeded the limit that was impossible to reach before. With the inertia falling from the sky, it broke through more than 8 times the speed of sound. The huge sound seemed to be roaring in the atmosphere. A distance of more than 100 kilometers is almost instantaneous for a big mosquito. His body was more than 200 kilometers above the ground, looking at the dilapidated scenery below. The small village was still in the same place, but it had many more houses than the village he was familiar with. But more importantly, at this time, some metal monsters are constantly destroying these houses. The ground is full of human corpses, and some people are hiding in the nearby bushes, setting traps for the metal monsters, and then fighting there. Jia Yan has the ability to see with infrared rays. Therefore, the distribution of human beings below can be seen clearly at a glance. However, he did not see his parents directly, anywhere in the small village. Below is the scene of a battle between humans and a small army of metal monsters. The huge battle scene here was caused by more than 100 metal monsters, but they were extremely violent and almost turned the entire small village into ruins. The red light keeps attacking. The ground is a mess. The wooden houses were constantly burning, and some were swaying and collapsing. Facing the attack of the metal monsters, these simple houses could not hold up even a ray of red light. Mom! I want to pee. In the basement of a house, the 6-year-old son of the owner of the house pulled his mother beside him and said in a half-crying voice. They have been hiding in this basement for nearly a day. When the owner of the house was before, he was armed with weapons, he fought several attacks against metal monsters in the outside world. After that, he died in the basement passage, using his body to protect the safety of his family. Therefore, the metal monster did not look at his body, and the mother and son in the passage were also protected. My son is still ignorant. He was clearly told not to speak, but he still spoke at this time. On one side, a metal monster was looking for survivors in his ruins. Like a cat that smelled fishy smell, his footsteps suddenly stopped and he looked in this direction. Don't talk, be good. The hostess quickly covered her son's mouth. She looked above at her husband's dead body, and tears fell one by one. However, she still remembered that before his death, she said that she wanted her to be young. She was raised by her young son, so she couldn't hold back from crying. Thank you very much for the reward. Buletin was extremely moved. I guarantee that this book of Giant Mosquito will not be a eunuch. Special thanks to the book friend 9-Angled Pupils for his several consecutive 1888 tips. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Buletin U. Chapter 313. But the young son didn't know the danger at this time. or he was afraid, but couldn't hold back his tears. Suddenly, amidst the approaching footsteps of the metal monster, the child cried loudly in his mother's arms. In the ruins, this voice was absolutely obvious. As expected, the metal monster accelerated its pace. The red light above his head flashed and was about to burst out. The hostess listened to the noise above, and she also wanted to comfort her son and stop him from crying, but now she had no choice but to look at a few metal feet and walk to her husband's body. After that, the body was violently thrown away. A ferocious metal monster head appeared in front of you. The red light from the barrel of the gun above his head has reached the critical moment to burst out. After that, the red light really exploded. The red light shot out. The hostess had no way to resist, she could only close her eyes tightly and hold the child in her arms tighter. Just when the red light bombarded down, an arrogant huge body descended from the sky. This body cannot be described as how huge it is. The wings spread out, directly covering a radius of 20 meters. The 6 super slender legs each reached a length of 20 meters, making people intimidated by the sight of them. But compared to these superficial things, his super high speed is what makes people even more frightened. With the sound of tearing the air, he swooped down in the night. His speed is too fast, too fast, too fast. Boom 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 boom. The hostess was holding her child in her arms. When she was almost desperate, she felt a huge shockwave coming. The metal monster above her head was almost completely unresisted by this shockwave. Was swept into the sky. The big mosquito doesn't even need to attack, the strong wind brought by his huge body. A large piece of metal monster has been removed from the ruins. Sweep away. Some even smashed into the surrounding forest. The remaining one rolled to the ground in an extremely embarrassed state. The big mosquito fell to the ground, and right under his feet was a metal monster. The monster kept struggling, but it couldn't shake the weight of such a huge giant mosquito. There was only a constant struggle under his feet. After, the giant mosquito didn't seem to notice at all. The middle foot that stepped on his body pushed downwards hard. Click. Crisp cracks were heard. This metal monster is difficult to damage even with human firearms. He was actually trampled to pieces by a giant mosquito. What a powerful force this is, and how much strength it requires. Is it possible to do this? The giant mosquito stood proudly at the scene of the battle, his body just standing there. It was enough to make everyone focus their attention on him. Stand there normally. He was also more than 5 meters tall, surrounded by low ruined wooden houses. No building exceeds his height. This supergiant monster has gleaming compound eyes. He stands here and looks at a house. This house was the house where Jia's family lived before. He found a small red suitcase at the door of this house. The clothes and other things contained in the suitcase have been completely poured out. Not only does the suitcase look familiar, but even the few pieces of clothing poured out of it are very familiar to Jia Yan. Those are little sister Jia Lin's clothes. There was even one piece that Jia Yan bought for his little sister during the Chinese New Year the year before last with the money he earned from his work-study program. Look carefully, there is a trace of blood around the small suitcase. In an instant, the anger in Jia Yan's heart almost exploded. You all deserve to die. He looked at the metal monsters around him and his body moved suddenly. Although the metal monsters in this battlefield can destroy a small village with a population of several thousand, their number is only more than 100. And they dispersed to pursue the humans who had just been defeated. At this time, there were only more than 50 metal monsters left in the ruins. Jia Yan is angry. These more than 50 metal monsters are definitely not enough for him to kill now. His body moves quickly. Even at this time, he used his brainwave power. Boom boom boom. A metal monster that was only approached by his huge body seemed to be frozen for an instant. Their bodies are constantly trembling and unable to move. This is a basic use of the power of brainwaves. But this basic use is not something that everyone can use. Even if it can be used, without Jia Yan's super powerful brainwave power, he can only control some small things such as paper. But at this moment, Jia Yan actually approached one by one and controlled all the metal monsters. Their power makes it impossible to break free. Knife-shaped cuticles on the forefoot, lift them gently. The scene was like crushing an ant to death. A pair of knife-shaped horns on the front feet, crush them down. The immobile metal monsters were directly pierced under his huge knife-shaped horns, and even their entire bodies were smashed into pieces. It can be said that the giant mosquito does not use the sharpness of the knife-shaped horns of its front feet, but its pure power. It can easily crush these metal monsters that are extremely hard to humans, one by one, to death. He used his 4 long legs to step forward, and a pair of knife-shaped horny front feet attacked the metal monster on the ground. A battle like an elephant versus an ant. The metal monsters are fighting back too. Their red light shot up one after another. The damaged human beings revealed their horrified eyes one by one from their hidden places. All they saw was that this giant mosquito, which they had never seen before, was as easy to kill as it was to deal with those metal monsters that they could not possibly deal with. As for the red light emitted by the metal monster's counterattack, the giant mosquito monster's roots did not hide. The red light attacked his body one after another. It was almost impossible to stir up a wave, except for the huge explosion sound and fire. For the giant mosquito, it seems to be an attack like tickling. It's not a battle of the same level at all. This giant mosquito is invincible. Those hidden humans were all looking at the current battle situation in horror. Or it should not be said that it was a battle, but a massacre. The supergiant mosquito massacres the metal monster. Once upon a time, all human beings were trembling with fear under the slaughter of metal monsters, but in the current situation, the metal monsters were also slaughtered without resistance under the attack of giant mosquitoes. I dare not say whether they are trembling, but it depends on from his actions. You can tell that these metal monsters are actually a little timid. Metal monsters know how to retreat. Humans can hardly believe this. In almost less than a minute, that shining and fast figure had already walked around the edge of the battlefield. His body is huge, but his speed is not slow. The figure of the big mosquito looks like he is just taking a slow step, but one step is a distance of more than 10 meters. In just a few steps, you can walk through the entire small village from beginning to end. All the metal monsters on the way were slaughtered. The remains of metal monsters are all over the ground. Jia Yan attacked these metal monsters just by the way. While he was attacking, he was observing the nearby ground and the human body heat sources in those houses. I hope I can find the shadow of my family in it. But what disappointed him was that none of these people looked like his parents or sister. Finally, the road ahead reached the end of this newly built small village. Jia Yan stood there was deep thought in his compound eyes. Not being found doesn't mean it's a bad thing. At least there are no traces of his family among so many corpses. This can be said to be the best news among the bad news. At least they didn't die in this town. Did they also leave this village and go to other places after I left? It's impossible. The box was just overturned, unless someone snatched the little girl's suitcase away. Jia Yan has a headache. In such a big country, if his parents and sisters are still alive but have left here, he really can't guess where they will go. No. I forgot. I have the ability to communicate now. I can ask these survivors. Suddenly an idea flashed in Jia Yan's mind. Book friends on Chuangxi and other sites, it's best to come and support Baiyu. I won't get any money from your rewards on Chuangxi QQ and other sites, and I can only share half of the subscription money, therefore, it is not of much help to Baiyu. I hope that book friends who really support this book will get up and subscribe for the genuine version. Thank you. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 314. Thank you all for your subscriptions and tips these days. Today there are 3 updates. This is the first update. Please subscribe to the official version if the results can be maintained. There will be more updates, the second and third updates, published around 11 o'clock. Click. A man hiding behind a ruin-like wooden house saw the giant mosquito monster in front of him. Before he could even react, he killed what he considered to be metal monsters that looked like death. Afterwards, this super huge giant mosquito monster actually turned its head at this moment and thrust its head down towards where he was. Ah! The man was startled, and his face instantly turned extremely pale. He wanted to move, but his legs and feet seemed to be attracted, and he had no ability to move at all. Jia Yan's brainwave power activates again. This man was frozen in place, unable to move. The giant mosquito continued to approach, and the man almost fainted. He didn't know why he couldn't move. He only knew that there was an invisible force that suppressed his whole body, without any resistance. What on earth is going on? Is it the fault of this giant mosquito? What kind of power is it? The man used all his strength, but he still couldn't move his legs. He was almost in tears. He hated himself for why he walked out of curiosity when he saw giant mosquitoes killing metal monsters before. This was a supergiant mosquito that could kill even metal monsters like an insect. Although the giant mosquito monsters seem to have a relatively good reputation among humans on Earth, they have not appeared for nearly half a year, and such a huge giant mosquito has never appeared before. God knows whether this giant mosquito is like the others. Just like our companions, we have no intention to kill humans. So this man turned pale and almost fainted. The giant mosquito's mouthparts were almost close to his cheek. Extremely ferocious, extremely terrifying. The man's eyes turned white. Already on the verge of fainting. Just at this time, next to his ears, there was a very pleasant man's voice, which sounded slowly and unhurriedly. The voice was very deep and a little hoarse. It sounds majestic. The man was startled by this calm voice and was in a state of unconsciousness. Recover quickly. Do you know a family, named Xia? Although the sound sounded nice, it felt like it was ringing in his ears. Just like a child who has just learned to speak, low and a little stuttering. The man was first startled by a sound that shook the air, as if someone was speaking near him. He turned his head quickly. Look around. But there was no one around at all. Tell me. This place. Is there a family named Xia? The man heard the voice again. This time he finally reacted. Horrified sight. Put it on this super huge mosquito in front of you. This giant mosquito can actually talk. How can it be? Is this something wrong with my nerves, or is the world changing? The giant mosquito monster can actually talk. It's completely impossible. The man looked stunned, as if he had seen the most incredible thing in the world. Although those media have asserted long ago that giant mosquito monsters and metal monsters are intelligent monsters, and there must be an intelligent creature in or behind them. But no one believed that these monsters could actually make sounds. Even those metal monsters that are considered alien species are unable to communicate, and these giant mosquito monsters that are like mutated local monsters are even less likely to be able to communicate. But now this human being heard a clear voice, which seemed to be coming from the body of the super huge monster. Moreover, I am still asking him for the name of a human family. What the hell is going on? It's simply ridiculous. Say it. When the man's face changed drastically, and he almost felt that he had a mental problem, a huge voice came out from his ears. The sound seemed to shake the heaven and the earth. It made his eardrums buzz. As the sound rang out, the huge head of the giant mosquito lowered its head like a demonstration. A pair of compound eyes that were larger than a human head, with an inexplicable mysterious luster, stared at this human man. Now it was really confirmed that the sound was really coming from the giant mosquito in front of me. The man's eyes widened. But he soon realized that the giant mosquito was angry. Geo family. The Geo family. Could it be that Geo family who, for some unknown reason, is highly valued by two powerful instructors? Are the giant mosquitoes looking for them? There is only one family named Jia in our village. I wonder if it is you, the person you are looking for. Really have? Regardless of whether Jia Yan is right or not, there are not many people named Jia in China. If there are really Jia family members, plus the small suitcase, it is very likely that they are his parents and little sister. Moreover, the two killers will also take care of them, and it is very likely that their family will settle down in this developing village. Where have they gone? Jia Yan was so anxious that his brainwave power seemed to have become much more stable, and his words were very fluent. They just escaped to the alley. They brought more than 20 combat teams with them. This man pointed in a direction. Before he could finish speaking, the man only felt a violent wind blowing past his eyes. The powerful shock wave caused his body to fly backwards involuntarily. He hit the ruins hard and finally stopped. He found that he could move. And when you look around, where is the shadow of the giant mosquito in front of you? When he looked up again, he saw a huge figure, already flying quickly in the direction of the trail he pointed at low altitude and far away. Oh my God! The man looked down at his crotch, his face felt so hot that he was so scared that he peed his pants. But when faced with this situation, most people don't believe that others won't wet their pants. Regardless of this man, he sat down on the ground and couldn't move for a long time with his face turned blue. He just said that he started to fly and flew in the direction pointed by the man. When he heard this man's words, he didn't care whether the other person would be injured in the strong wind he took off. He actually heard news about his suspected family members. If the other party was really talking about his family members, then they might be extremely dangerous now. Jia Yan's antennae and hearing were extremely exaggerated. There were scattered gunshots coming from the direction the man was pointing. He had long known that there were some humans and metal monsters fighting over there. But before, Jia Yan didn't know that there might be relatives there, and he was not a savior. It was impossible for him to go and save a human being attacked by a metal monster. In that case, the city of Shanghai where he was before was obviously attacked by metal monsters. He wanted to save people, so that was the best choice. Guaranteed that one save can save many. But he didn't do that. Now when he heard the man actually say that there might be parents and younger sister over there, Jia Yan used his extremely fast speed to fly over there very quickly. At the same time, Jia Yan thought that a general attack by metal monsters was taking place in Shanghai, but suddenly, there was a trace of peace. Not a moment. The metal monsters retreated from the city like a tide. It's not like a rout, instead, he chose to retreat. Even when they passed by some helpless humans, they didn't waste any time emitting a red light. This scene indirectly saved many human beings. As for these metal monsters, they evacuated from the city. Each of them had a red gun barrel on the top of their head with a strange red light. They followed each other quickly towards the direction where the supergiant mosquito flew and disappeared. Their ranks are neat and consistent, and they are simply the best soldiers. At the same time, all the metal monsters in the Shanghai area gave up their attack targets and joined the team. It is foreseeable that as long as these tens of thousands of metal monsters pursue the giant mosquito, a fierce battle will follow. The supergiant mosquito, with 1 against 10,000, is about to fight in an unprecedented battle. The big mosquito himself doesn't know this yet. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 315. Jia Yan just had a little feeling while flying. But he just looked at the distant land with his compound eyes. After that, his compound eyes became shiny and he stopped looking. If there is a fight, I will accompany you. But before that, I must save my family and settle them down. Thinking of this, Jia Yan's speed became even faster. The arrogant big mosquito, at this time, appeared to be extremely fast, and his speed completely exploded at this time. The big mosquito at this time looked completely different from what he looked like on Earth a few months ago. A few months ago, although his body had reached 6 meters in length, his strength was only able to deal with some metal monsters on the battlefield at that time. And all he has is the power of physical combat. But now, not only has his physical strength become more powerful, but an even greater improvement lies in his brainwave power. The development of brainwave power and the increase in knowledge may be his biggest gain from this journey to the universe. No one can imagine how many things Jia Yan has obtained in the universe. These things may even be understood by Daphne. I guess they all regret bringing Jia Yan into the universe. But there are no ifs and there are no regrets. Although Jia Yan doesn't regret going to the universe, he still feels a little regretful because his family has not taken care of him in the past few months. If an accident really happens, Jia Yan's mood will definitely not be any better. During this period of his life after rebirth, he spent many painful situations relying on thinking about his family. It was also because of his family that he could endure the never-ending loneliness and loneliness. If his family dies in the war, his spiritual support will disappear, and Jia Yan himself doesn't even know what he will become like. He was flying extremely fast towards the fighting area. Bang 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 bang. Gunshots continued to sound in that place, and as the giant mosquito approached, there were countless rounds of bullets fired, shooting out of the darkness. There are streaks of red light among them. From the interlacing of you and me, you can see how fierce the battle is on the battlefield. In this battleground, the two injured killers were each covering their wounds. The expression on his face is ferocious. This time is the time to test them. There are fewer and fewer combat teams around us. Those gunners with some experience died one by one, and the rest were newcomers with no combat experience. They now have several options. First, just follow the current style of play, continue to stay here, and fight the metal monster. The second, it means to abandon some personnel and let those abandoned fight the metal monsters in this place, and they lead the main force to escape. As for the third one, don't care about everything. The two of them escaped on their own. In this world, they have guns in their hands, as well as combat and control experience. They are heroes wherever they go. As long as everyone is abandoned, even if they climb the rock with bare hands, they can escape from the desperate situation surrounded by this metal monster. The best way is actually the third one. However, can they abandon everything here? The combat effectiveness of the two of them has been greatly reduced after being injured several times in more than half a year. Even the combined force may not be able to defeat an ordinary gunfighting expert, but if this team does not have their command, there is absolutely no hope of survival. That's right, their original job was to be killers. The so-called killers should be cold-faced and ruthless, with no humanity at all. But in this village, they got a lot of feelings that they didn't get before. Apart from anything else, the Geo family treated them not just like they were saviors, but as if they were really family members. If they want to escape, will they also abandon the Geo family who are beside them at this time? If it had been half a year ago, they might have done this without hesitation. Two killers, one was an orphan and the other was from a single-parent family. After that, their only relative passed away. One was 15 years old and the other was 7 years old. They met by chance on the street. The 7-year-old young man wearing glasses was about to starve to death. Bearded, who was 15 years old at the time, rescued him. After that, the two seemed to have become family members, not relatives, but better than relatives. Even later, by mistake, they became killers together. This is all forced by life. If there were other options, I believe they would not make the choice to become a killer. Perhaps it is because they actually have the warmth of humanity in their hearts, so they cannot become top masters when they are killers. During the 6 months in this village, they learned how to be ordinary people again and how to receive other people. After more than 10 years, they once again tried the taste of family affection. Under such circumstances, will you give up on those present? Forget it, let's fight. Even if you die, the bearded man raised his firearm, and he and the young man wearing glasses hid in the bushes. A member of the combat team who was separated from the main force ran in front of him, and behind him was the shadow of a metal monster. During the chase, the combat team member suddenly fell to the ground, and was about to be chased by the metal monster. Bang bang bang. At this time, the gun in Beard's hand rang out. Bang 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 bang. Bullets hit the metal monster's body one after another. The pursuing metal monster kept retreating. In its body, there is a rough baffle that blocks the bullets in its chest. This baffle is the only change in the metal monster after several battles. The reason for this change is that a baffle was specially installed to remove their only weakness that could be exploited by humans, which is the heart that is exposed to the outside world. Therefore, at this time, Beard's bullets were very accurate. Even if he shot at this only weak point, the metal monster still showed no sign of falling. In its head, red light suddenly lit up. Bo! A red ray shot out. The red light ray attacked by the metal monster is extremely powerful. Although its speed is not as exaggerated as the speed of light, it is definitely not slower than the speed of any human bullet. And when this red ray was fired, it was aimed at the target that was now the greatest threat to the metal monster, the beard. But at this moment, the bearded man seemed to have known that he was about to become a target. At this moment, his figure jumped forward and ran into the grass. Unfortunately, the speed of red light is not something he can dodge with his speed. So this red light still hit his body and penetrated hard in the back. Ugh! Bearded Beard exclaimed with a suppressed cry of pain. The fleeing combat team member felt like he was being pulled into the bushes. It's a young man wearing glasses. The figures of the 3 people suddenly disappeared in the bushes, looking for the book garden. And the metal monster, just recovering from the dizziness of being shot, fired towards the bushes. There seemed to be no discovery after a string of red rays of light, so they had no choice but to gather in the direction of the large army. Instructor Chen. Your injuries. Not long after he left, the voice of the combat team member almost crying sounded in the bushes. It's okay. I've been injured too many times by these bastard metal monsters. This injury is nothing, he responded with a slightly weak tone from the bearded man. The young man wearing glasses on one side was not so optimistic. At this time, the injuries on his beard and back were simply terrifying. Although a red light was only the weakest version released by the metal monster, it still penetrated a human body very deeply. It's a simple thing, so at this time, the beard and back have been completely penetrated. There was anxiety in his expression. Although the injury did not appear to be serious, it was definitely not an ordinary minor injury. If first aid was not given as soon as possible, his life might be in danger. But in this battlefield in the wilderness, how is it possible to get first aid? Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 316. Third update. The third update is over. Please subscribe to the official version. Friends who read pirated books, for Bulletin U's hard work, come to cheateon.com and subscribe to the official version. Thank you very much. The young man wearing glasses was extremely anxious at this moment, but he did not notice that there was a slight sound coming from the bushes near them. When he regained a little vigilance and focused his gaze under the faint moonlight, he was stunned. After that, there was a helpless smile. The house leaked and it rained all night. In front of them, they were completely surrounded by about 10 metal monsters. Oh, I'm going to die, that's what you said. The young man wearing glasses raised his firearm. The bearded man looked at the scenery in front of him exhaustedly and shook his head. They all knew that the scene would lead to death. Unless Senior Chang Gwen sends his giant mosquito out. But for half a year, the giant mosquito and Senior Chang Gwen have not appeared. Is it possible that it will appear now? The bearded man no longer paid attention to his injuries. He was already facing a dead end. In comparison, that injury was already a trivial matter. It's a pity that the Geo family is still in the large combat team behind. If they die, then the Geo family and the remaining troops will definitely have no chance of survival. In fact, gunshots were also heard from the direction of the large fighting force over there, and they seemed to be surrounded. The combat capabilities of the metal monster fighting force are definitely not something that such a fighting force with minimal training experience can defeat. The two killers looked at each other with a wry smile. They accepted their fate. The metal monsters in front of them had red light in their gun barrels. There were more than a dozen metal monsters, which really gave these three people a lot of face. At such a close distance, even metal monsters with extremely poor aim can hit them accurately without any deviation. The red light continued to spread, and the metal monsters' movements were uniform. Almost at this moment, they have to be launched together. And the two killers are naturally not the kind of people who just wait to die. Even if they are to die, they must be trapped beasts still fighting. Their firearms were about to emit red light when the other party was about to fire. It was also lifted up, even if it could not cause harm to the opponent. Just scare them. Although, the metal monster doesn't seem to have the function of being scared at all. But they still did it. Senior Chang Gwen. We can only protect the Geo family up to this point. We've tried our best. Bearded. I only felt a burst of red light appear in front of my eyes. He knew he was going to die, but his last thoughts were. He actually felt that he had tried his best to protect the Geo family. Although in the end, it may end in tragedy, but this matter. He felt no regrets. Boom 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 boom. Right now. An extremely arrogant figure. Overwhelmed the sound of bullets fired. Overwhelmed by the shining red light. Overwhelming the existence of all life in the mountains and forests. This is an extremely huge monster. He brings with him extremely fast winds. Falling from the sky. No one could see his figure clearly because it was too fast. Too fast, too fast. It is impossible for human eyes to see his body appearance at such a close distance. Even such a huge body just turned into a blurry shadow, incredibly fast. The huge body crashed down. The bearded people below were already on the verge of death. However, at this moment, this super huge body had a strange light in its compound eyes. His speed, for a moment, exceeded the speed when it flew over. Faster. Bang. At the moment when no one could react, the super monster descended from the sky. Between monsters and humans. And those attacking red lights also lit up at this time. They quickly shot at the humans, but in front of them, there was an existence that they could not penetrate. Boom boom boom. A stream of red light shot at the huge monster's body. The monster's compound eyes became more lustrous, and he took a step forward. Those metal monsters are very close to humans. The super huge monsters have completely occupied the space between them. And the step he took now was directly above the heads of those metal monsters. His super powerful feet stepped hard on the metal monster below. A pair of sharp front feet also swung quickly. Those metal monsters wanted to move, but after trembling all over, they couldn't move at all. It was as if an immobilization technique had been cast on him, and he was firmly fixed in place, unable to move. Click. The foot fell, and the two metal monsters were trampled to pieces in the huge monster's foot. Several other monsters were also cut into pieces by the sharp knife-shaped horns of the giant monster's front feet. Like a pile of scrap metal, metal monsters that could not be penetrated by human firearms seemed to be ants, and were destroyed by this sudden super monster. Everything just happened in an instant. When the monsters finished off these dozen metal monsters, the three humans behind seemed to be immersed in the fear of dying, but everything that happened in front of them made their minds go blank for a moment. I can barely react with my thoughts. This is giant mosquito monster. But God, where can such a huge giant mosquito exist? Standing in front of them, they were all over 5 meters tall, and their overall length reached 10 meters. Is it possible for such a huge mosquito to exist in the world? Much bigger than an elephant. A supergiant monster that is impossible to appear on the ground. No. Giant mosquito? Could it be that it was sent by Senior Zhang when, the young man wearing glasses reacted quickly? This giant mosquito was obviously here to help them, and even used his body to block them when they were in crisis. Red light. Although this giant mosquito seemed to have no fear of those red lights, it used its body to save them after all. It's impossible for Senior Changwen to care so much about their life and death. The young man wearing glasses was very precise in his positioning, so he realized at this moment that the main purpose of the supergiant mosquito, an invincible giant mosquito, was not to save them, but to save the Jiao family. Although he has never understood why Senior Changwen and these giant mosquitoes value the Jiao family so much, this does not prevent him from knowing the true purpose of this giant mosquito. At that moment, he jumped up from the ground, pointed at a forest not far away and shouted. The Jiao family is over there. Go and save them. After finishing these words, the super huge giant mosquito has already started to move. The three of them only felt a huge wind sound like a typhoon, and each of them was swept to the ground by the strong hurricane. And the supergiant monster that was standing in front of them before, even covering the sky, has disappeared at this time. It's as if he didn't exist from the beginning. The speed of this giant mosquito has reached a level that violates the laws of physics. Such a huge body could move at any time. It could even slap Einstein and other scientists on the cheek, causing it to become swollen. Jiao Lin hid behind a big rock. His father held a pistol distributed to him by the combat team. This pistol had a short range, but it had magnetic shock bombs that were specially designed to deal with metal monsters. Jia's father was now using this pistol, which no one in the combat team looked down upon. Firearms are protecting my wife and daughter. Just like what he has been doing for the past 20 years. His son was not protected, so he swore at that time that no matter what, if he wanted to hurt his family again, he would have to step on his body first. Several members of the combat team who were supposed to protect their safety either escaped on their own or died in the battle. Now, it's the untrained Jia's father's turn to stand up. Bang bang bang. Suddenly, the gun in Jia Sheng's hand glowed. A metal monster rushed out diagonally, but was hit backwards by Father Jia's 3 bullets. But it didn't have any injuries. Just adding a simple metal plate, the weapon that China had finally developed to deal with metal monsters became completely useless. While the metal monster was retreating, Jia's father poured out all the bullets from the pistol in his hand. Unfortunately, the accuracy behind it was so poor that it didn't hit the metal monster's body at all. The metal monster was not injured at all. He quickly adjusted his steps. The barrel of the gun at the top of his head suddenly looked like a fierce flame. It's going to emit red light? Ah! At this moment, a delicate figure rushed out from behind the rock. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 317. Xiaolin, an exclamation came from Jiao Mu. At the moment when this delicate figure appeared, she screamed loudly. However, that charming figure did not pay attention to him. Instead, at this time, he ran even faster. As she rushed out, she picked up an item in her hand. At the same time, gunfire rang out. This figure turned out to be Jiao Lin, who was only 19 years old. This girl, I don't know when, picked up a blood-stained firearm in her hand. This is the weapon she has always wanted since the war broke out, a tool that can protect her family. Because of this idea, she had already figured out how to shoot firearms by watching from the sidelines in the past days. However, no one agreed to let her join the combat team, so she never showed strong aggression. But now, this young girl finally broke out. She has never been a pretty girl. Even though she has always given the impression that she is a bit naive, look at what she has been doing before. Her brother died, and she, who had never traveled far, dared to stay alone in Shanghai City and wanted to avenge her brother. Back then, when everyone was panicking in the Shanghai Stock Exchange, she dared to go alone to see her best friend. Even though the ferocious giant mosquito was right in front of her, she just relied on her courage and familiarity to step forward and touch the giant mosquito's body. Maybe everyone underestimated this girl's courage, or in other words, she was like this, which showed that she and Jia Yan were real siblings. The personalities are so similar. Ah! The gun in the girl's hand spit out tongues of fire like crazy. She pulled the trigger with her finger, and the bullets spurted out one by one, forming a web of flames in front of her. The metal monster on the opposite side held up the flames and approached step by step amid her barrage without any accuracy. If metal monsters are just monsters that humans can deal with when they lose their temper, then in this world, metal monsters should have been extinct long ago. Jia Lin looked helplessly at the metal monster. Get closer step by step. The firearm she pulled the trigger on. The tongue of fire cannot stop the metal monster from approaching. Maybe this girl is as courageous as her brother, but she is too impulsive, which is completely different from Jia Yan, who plans to act later. Xiaolin, go quickly. Just when the metal monster was approaching, Jia Sheng had already reacted and picked up a dry branch on the ground. He actually rushed forward and struck the metal monster with a stick, whose barrel had exploded with red light. He took half a step back due to the blow. In order to protect his daughter, this middle-aged man also exploded with strength. But metal monsters are not something that can be dealt with so easily. When it turns around, a red light that had been brewing for a long time was accurately fired towards Jia Lin. Jia Sheng couldn't react to the situation at this time. It was actually the time when he was about to lose his only daughter. Just when Jia Sheng was so anxious that he almost went crazy. In the thrilling moment, Jia Lin was about to be hit by a red light shot. The eyes are in a completely different place. She saw it. Not far away, that kind of super huge monster was coming quickly. A ferocious body at ultra high speed. Already close to this area. Giant mosquito. Jia Lin's words came out of her mouth when the metal monster attacked, and her voice was full of surprise. She didn't even see the crisis she was about to suffer. The big mosquito monster was approaching so fast that everyone could only see a blurry shadow. Boom 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 boom. The fierce wind howled, and the huge creature under the wind looked like an ancient beast falling from the sky. His eyes sparkled under the refracted moonlight. When he arrived, no one even noticed the attacking red light except Jia Sheng, and it simply disappeared. The giant mosquito monster that was descending gently stretched out one of its front legs and calmly blocked it. Boop. The attack of the metal monster looked so pale at this time. It was very effective against human attacks, but these red lights had no effect at all on the giant mosquito in front of me. This is Jia Sheng, who originally thought that he was about to lose his daughter again, looked at the scene in front of him. He was stunned. This is another giant mosquito monster. And this giant mosquito is completely different from the one they rode on before. He was much bigger than the one I had sat on before. Even a discerning person can see that this monster's combat power is much more powerful than the previous 6-meter giant mosquito. And what is going on? Jia Sheng was extremely surprised. This giant mosquito monster was protecting his family again. Although he had felt this way before, it was like this again. He didn't know why this happened. Could it be that their family is really attracted to these giant mosquitoes? What a joke. But just hope my daughter is fine. Jialin was also watching the scene in front of her. Unknown to her, one of the giant mosquito's front legs fell down and helped her block a red light attack without leaving any trace. But in this situation, when she saw the giant mosquito, she knew that this giant mosquito was coming to save them again. In fact, she has been saved by giant mosquitoes several times. Even though this giant mosquito looked different from before, at the first moment of her keenness, she vaguely felt that he was the one she knew before. He actually became stronger again. Jialin was so happy at this time. Behind the father and daughter, Jiamu, who had just appeared, also had a horrified expression on her face, looking at the body of the giant mosquito above her head. His body seems to have reached the sky. He is so tall and gives people an extremely strong sense of security. Mother Jia had just let her daughter run out without paying attention. Now when she chased her out, she saw the appearance of the giant mosquito. She immediately covered her mouth and almost screamed. "Big mosquito! You're here to help us again." Jialin didn't care so much, she hugged him immediately. Even though her parents had warned her more than once before that she shouldn't get too close to monsters like giant mosquitoes, she felt a sense of excitement when she saw the giant mosquitoes. The feeling of intimacy. It seems that it's like seeing my brother. Jia Yan stands on the ground. No one knew that this powerful giant mosquito could obviously not sweat, but just now, he was so frightened that he felt like he was breaking out in a cold sweat. Because he saw from a distance that his silly sister was actually attacking the metal monster, and the opponent's gun barrel had already lit up. If he had been slower, his little sister's life would have been in danger. And now the little girl is still acting stupid and doesn't know what happened before. Jia Yan was a little speechless. But when he saw his family, and they stood in front of him, nothing happened. Jia Yan felt a little relieved. He hadn't seen him for several months. Although his family had changed a bit, the good news was that they were all safe and sound. Jia Yan saw the little girl hugging one of his front legs under the moonlight. She had become more like a big girl again. My father's gray-haired temples have become more and more white. He must have lost his son, and in this apocalyptic era of war, he must have been very troubled in order to protect his wife and daughter. Jiamu was busy with some family matters and so I felt mentally and physically exhausted. Looking at the big mosquito, I seemed to feel a little excited. The Jia family seems to know that this big mosquito is here to help them. Yes, of course Jia Yan is here to help his family. Being trapped in the universe for so long, what has he been relying on? It was just the idea of seeing his family and helping them get through the difficulties that made him spend so much time. Now that things are coming to an end, he will naturally work hard. While he was looking at his family, his front foot held by Jialin did not move at all, but the other front foot was already moving quickly. He stabbed downwards fiercely. The metal monster, under the thrust of his attack, was directly turned into pieces in the attack without any suspense. A pair of remnants remained in place, not even giving it time to self-destruct. Jia Sheng's eyes twitched when he saw the attacking power of this giant mosquito. Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 318. This giant mosquito was obviously more powerful than the previous giant mosquito. However, when Jia Yan saw his daughter hugging the giant mosquito's front legs, but the other party didn't show any reaction, he had a ridiculous guess in his mind. Could this big mosquito really be the same one from before? Why should he help his family? Jia Sheng was extremely surprised. But after the metal monster was eliminated by the giant mosquito, something even more surprising happened to him. In other words, something happened that shocked the Jia family. "Are you okay?" A sound came from the air, and when the danger was temporarily lifted, It started to ring. The voice seemed to be a deep male voice, low and slightly hoarse. Very majestic. And it's authentic Chinese. It seems to have a little local accent from Fujian. It seems a little similar to their family's accent. The most surprising thing is that the sound rang in the air, as if it was coming from the ears of the Jiao family. This is... Jiao Lin raised her head, her eyes twinkling with surprise. Jiao Sheng looked at the big mosquito with a look of astonishment and forgot to answer for a moment. Jiao Mu lowered her fingers to cover her mouth, with a look of fear almost written all over her face. This big mosquito actually spoke. This is really... Yes, are you talking? We are all fine. Jiao Sheng was the first to react. He swallowed and said with some uncertainty. Talking to a giant mosquito seems strange. Could it be that this giant mosquito is really a monster? Otherwise, how could he speak, and even have a slight Fujian accent? No matter how you look at it, it is a very strange thing. It was the first time he talked to his family, and Jia Yan was in a very passionate mood. After he learned how to use brain waves to speak, he did it every day and every night. All thinking about it? Scenarios of successful communication with family members. Now, this scene really appears before our eyes. Bang 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 bang. And just as Jia Yan's heart was surging, there were fierce gunshots just over 200 meters away. Still ringing. Jia Yan's extremely high head suddenly lifted up. Low trees around. Can't hide from his sight. Jia Yan saw that there were more than a dozen humans with firearms there, protecting more than 70 old, weak, sick, and disabled people. Surrounded by the remaining 40 or so metal monsters in this forest. They were almost out of ammunition and several were seriously injured. But their counterattack against the metal monster, it still had some effect. Jia Yan flew over and saw many killed bodies of metal monsters along the way. This shows that their combat effectiveness is quite good. Jia Yan could guess that these people were trained by the two killers. And in this battle, the Jiao family didn't seem to be hurt in any way, so you know that they also helped a lot. So Jia Yan looked around. There are no metal monsters nearby that can harm his family. If there is one approaching, he can use his speed to rush over to rescue him. So after pondering for a while, he directly activated his brainwave power and asked a question. Are those fighting people your friends? His voice still sounded like a baby learning to speak, but the meaning was understandable. Father Jiao was stunned for a moment, and then he realized that the big mosquito was talking about the people in the fighting village. He suddenly had the thought that the big mosquito was asking for their opinions. As long as he opened his mouth, the big mosquito might be willing to help those friends who had saved their family several times during this battle. Why say no? Not only are they friends, some of them are life and death friends. Jiao Shen nodded quickly. Yes, they are all our friends. From his father's face, Jia Yan could see that some of those people must be more than just friends, so at that moment, he moved his feet slightly. After all, those people were not important to him, so he did not expand his speed because that would cause his family to be blown away by the strong wind. He just walked towards that direction slowly and step by step. During this period, several humans were killed by metal monsters, but for Jia Yan, there was no possibility of moving him. He didn't know these people. If his family hadn't wanted to save them and they were killed, Jia Yan wouldn't have even looked at them. And the humans over there are all in extreme pain. In the battle circle at this time, metal monsters have surrounded all humans. The intelligence of these monsters is not usually very high, but their war capabilities are still extremely powerful, especially when the number reaches a certain level, the combat strength will show a geometric improvement. Every human being was killed by them. A woman held her child, and her heart was pierced by a red light. But she still held her child tightly with her arms, and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. The woman looked at the child who was less than 3 years old. She had no time to say any words, she just shed tears from the corners of her eyes, and then swallowed. I took my last breath. The child was already crying loudly. This was a little girl. In this battle, she first lost her father, and now her mother also died beside her. Such a small child did not even understand the meaning of death. She just crying in the arms of my mother who fell to the ground. But the metal monster chasing over there would not pity such a child. Two metal monsters, taking steps and running, approached the crying little girl. Click, click, click. They ran quite fast, and within a few steps they reached the girl's side. She was lying in her mother's arms, looking at the two approaching metal monsters with her big watery eyes. Even if this child is ignorant, she still knows that these are two bad monsters. The red light they emitted shot down her father and now her mother. She is afraid. He yelled for mom. But the mother holding her didn't respond. Tears had soaked her clothes, but such crying was heard everywhere in the forest, and there were children younger than her. Everyone is too busy to take care of themselves, and no one can spare any time to help her. The red light above the heads of the two metal monsters lit up again. These monsters didn't have any emotions. They couldn't possibly show any mercy. But at this moment, an extremely fast slender thing was shot with perfect accuracy. Phew! He fiercely pierced the two metal monsters together in one breath, completely penetrating their bodies. This is an extremely long, needle-like thing. His front end is a thicker, huge needle-like thing. This is the mouth needle of the giant mosquito. Jia Yan rushed here and used the needle in his mouth that had not been used for a long time as an attack weapon. The mother did not save her, but only saved the 3-year-old girl in her arms. However, the little girl is still crying. Jia Yan looked at the scenery below. The blood of the mother who fell to the ground had been soaked in, completely soaking the little girl in her arms. Blood red color. Well. Jia Yan looked at the scenery and sighed deeply in his heart. His footsteps were a little happier, because even if he no longer had any thoughts of saving human beings, he didn't want to see the scenery appear again. What will happen to the little girl in the future? How will she survive? How many children like her were there during the war? Jia Yan didn't know, he only knew that at this time, should try its best to help these people. Of course, family comes first. The sound of several bombardments was heard everywhere in the forest. Jia Yan moved his long legs. His body was so huge that he could cover the forest area of 100 meters in radius in just a few steps. He eliminated all the metal monsters here one by one. The humans in the forest watched the huge monster pass above their heads. With a stab from the forefoot or the needle in the mouth parts, the metal monster could be easily eliminated. They were all extremely horrified. They had all heard about the giant mosquito monster, but this was the first time for everyone to be so close to the giant mosquito monster. Moreover, this giant mosquito seemed to be something they had never known before. An extremely huge 10-meter-long giant mosquito. His fighting ability is incredible. The metal monsters that they couldn't fight against were easily turned into a ball of scrap metal like toys under the attack of this metal monster. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 319. Bang! Jia Yan stabbed another metal monster into pieces. But at this time, he was no longer so careless. He wanted to kill the metal monsters as much as possible while ensuring the safety of the humans below, especially those with children. Otherwise, the adult dies but the child stays. This thing is too sad. When Jia Yan attacked, he used his brainwave power, which he was not very proficient in, to the maximum extent. He discovered that in the Earth's environment with air and gravity, his brainwave power seemed to have certain limitations. This limitation is a subtle feeling. He knows that his original power can control things about 30 meters away at most, but now, it is only about 25 meters away. No matter how far it is, he is a little powerless. However, under the influence of gravity and air, the area he currently controls is less than 25 meters. Moreover, the power of brain waves becomes weaker as the distance is further away. The distance that can really restrain the metal monster is about 20 meters. But this distance is enough. When Jia Yan arrived at a place, he first used his brainwave power. He controlled everything within a radius of 20 meters. The most brainless thing about metal monsters is that they will keep gathering around an opponent they know they can't defeat. In this case, Jia Yan's battle will be easier. Brainwave power activates. Buzz buzz. There is a huge vibration force in the air, spreading. Under the influence of this power, the metal monsters seemed to freeze as the giant mosquito passed by. All we can do is wait for the big mosquito's front legs or the stylet in its mouthparts to prick us. Jia Yan uses whatever attack method is effective. He is extremely fast and walks extremely fast. Almost none of the metal monsters passing by can fight back against him. Is this giant mosquito here to help us? Just when the giant mosquito attacked the metal monster, the residents of the village below, each one of them seemed to have seen the most incredible thing in the world. In the previous situation, they had completely lost confidence in their hope of survival. After all, although there are dozens of them, they are the ones who truly possess combat capabilities. Just a dozen people. The metal monster launched a general attack, and they immediately dispersed. And those who own firearms either abandon these partners who need protection, or are attacked by metal monsters. Without any surprise, he became the dead soul of the red light ray. These people are in this little forest. They were hiding in all directions, but they found that the metal monster had completely surrounded the area. So even though these people are already running around, their numbers are still there. Still decreasing. As a result, this huge monster came in the dark night. People thought this was a monster. It was some kind of new weapon of the metal monster. Later, after detailed clues, they were shocked to understand, this was actually a giant mosquito. The giant mosquito monster has disappeared in today's world. Many people believe that the giant mosquito has been exterminated by the metal monster. But this giant mosquito appears again. Moreover, his figure is much larger than those giant mosquitoes seen on TV and in the media before. The body is actually 10 meters long. Standing tall, he is easily taller than the trees around him. Extremely scary. What surprised these people the most was that this giant mosquito was actually attacking those metal monsters. Moreover, all the metal monsters gave up attacking them, turned around, and attacked the giant mosquito. Now, people are saved. Boom. Suddenly, a huge explosion was heard in the forest. It was a metal monster whose body was immobilized by Jia Yan's brainwave power. After knowing that he could not move, he used the usual trick used by metal monsters against Jia Yan, which was to self-destruct. Jia Yan's compound eyes flashed. Where he stood was less than 10 meters away from the self-exploding metal monster. The self-destruction of this metal monster easily affected him. In the past, his body would never have dared to withstand a self-destruction attack from a metal monster at such a close range. But now is not the same as before. Jia Yan's body is even more powerful. He began to watch helplessly, knowing that the power of self-destruction was spreading towards his body. Even if he dodges, he knows it's a little too late, but he also wants to try to see if his current defense can stop the metal monster from detonating. Fierce flames spread in front of your eyes. Red fills the front of the compound eye. It's like being bathed in the light of flames. Jia Yan's entire huge body was swallowed up by this self-exploding flame. The huge body was completely trapped inside the flames. Bear bear. The tongues of fire swallowed up the light of the moon in the sky completely. At this moment, the forest completely turned into a sea of fire. Fortunately, most of the humans had already evacuated to the outskirts of the forest when the metal monster turned its attention to Jia Yan, and few were within the scope of the explosion. For a few people, it can only be said that they are unlucky. Big Mosquito. The Geo family was also watching the fighting over there. Seeing the entire forest turned into a sea of fire, Jialin was a little nervous. Although this girl understands that the giant mosquito monster cannot be her brother, she still has a strong feeling that this giant mosquito is a very familiar existence to her. So on so many occasions, she treated this giant mosquito monster as a good friend and took the initiative to contact it. Now that she saw the giant mosquito monster in the sea of fire, she was really worried. However, the flames pass. All the humans watching the battle had expressions of disbelief on their faces. I saw that huge body in the sea of fire, and in the firelight, it seemed that the phoenix was reborn in desire, and its figure was revealed again in the gradually extinguishing flames. Really? The redness in front of his eyes gradually dissipated, and his compound eyes saw the appearance of his body without any obstruction. A faint blue color appears on the surface of his body. And this azure blue is not like the previous one that couldn't cover the whole body, but in times of crisis, it covers the entire body. Because of their presence, Jia Yan's body showed no signs of injury at this time. Even the outermost parts of the exoskeleton on the body have no scars at all. Even the feeling of temperature rising in his body was not strong. This is his improvement after this mutation. The metal monster that was a great threat to him in the past self-destruct, but it was unable to cause any harm to him. Jia Yan looked at the metal monsters around him indifferently. They were also things with extremely high fire resistance. After all, they were all mines underground. Under the huge power of this self-destruction, only one of them could only retreat. They are just some mining robots. I will let you know now that you are only worthy of digging your mines underground. Jia Yan looked at the group of metal monsters in front of him with great pride in his heart. His strength has increased rapidly to the point where it is impossible to deal with these metal monsters. After fighting for so long, the metal monster has always been his main opponent, but now, he finally stepped out from the shadow of the metal monster, his main enemy. His strength is no longer something that these metal monsters can peek into. Boom boom boom. Jia Yan opened his wings, and the speed under his feet increased. A pair of giant wings, unfold directly. Slap it. A huge roar spread like crazy in this area. Humans far away can feel the crazy power in these wings. The strong wind passed through this area, and Jia Yan's speed was even higher due to the speed of flapping his wings. He rushed directly towards the place where several metal monsters gathered. Flying into the air about 10 meters away, Jia Yan's front feet attacked downwards. The flying mosquito is a nearly invincible existence. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Buletin Yu. Chapter 320. Even if Jia Yan is standing on the ground, he is already a monster that these metal monsters cannot defeat. However, it is he who is flying in the sky who shows his full strength. The speed and flexibility are comparable when not on the ground at all. One front foot stabs down. The speed of the stabbing completely exceeded the speed of sound. I don't know how much more than the speed of sound. Snapped. It's like a thunderous sound coming from the ground. As he continued his attack, several metal monsters were slashed by the sharp knife-shaped horns in his flight path. Click, click, click. These metal monsters, which had no resistance at all, were chopped into several pieces. Jia Yan has great pride in his heart. His fighting ability has been verified. Moreover, his family also received his rescue as soon as he returned. This matter has been very smooth. He can play even more wildly. The former great enemy has now been completely suppressed by his own strength and is thousands of miles away. Jia Yan has huge fighting power in his body. He wanted to use a big battle to vent out all the repression he had in the past. During this trip to the universe, he was plotted against by Daphne, and he was still full of resentment at first, but now it seems that it was a blessing in disguise, and the progress he made in the universe was also great. Now is the time for him to show what he has earned. Jia Yan's flying speed spread out, and his body was actually at a low altitude, directly reaching the speed of sound. There are not many remaining metal monsters. Even if they want to self-destruct again, they can't even catch Jia Yan's body. The 1 second it takes before self-destructing is enough for Jia Yan to kill them several times. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The big mosquito just feels like he is arrogant to the world. The battle can be said to have ended not long after it started. Dozens of metal monsters. Even Jia Yan before this mutation. It can be solved, not to mention he is now more powerful. He felt that every mutation was a huge improvement, but this time. This is the most significant progress he has made since his rebirth. Therein lies the strength of the body. It's just one reason, the greater power is his brainwave power. Brainwave power. Having more functions gives him a more powerful feeling. It also represents the broader road ahead for Big Mosquito. The previous depression seemed to disappear in an instant, and Jia Yan used himself to win several consecutive games against the metal monsters. Re-established his confidence in fighting. Cut. Cut. After a few attacks, the metal monster in the forest. At this time, he died completely and completely. This giant mosquito is incredibly powerful. 2 killers over there. I have found the Geo family in the woods. They are gathering people who escaped from the forest. Beard's injury was serious and he needed help to stand upright. However, he still had gleaming eyes, staring at the body of the giant mosquito in the battle. Others also looked at the battle of the giant mosquitoes in this way. At this time, they all had a sense of horror. They all knew that the giant mosquito race was a monster race that could fight with metal monsters and win, but everyone he never thought that there would be a big mosquito with such a powerful fighting power. In front of him, the metal monster was no different from a toy. Yes, he has become stronger. Jia Lin was beside them, looking at the injured people and the acquaintances who thought about dying, and seemed a little uninterested. But her words made the young man with a beard and glasses slightly startled. More powerful, what does it mean? Could it be that Jia Lin thought that this giant mosquito was the one they encountered before? How can this be? After not seeing each other for several months, even that giant mosquito couldn't possibly have grown to such an exaggerated level in just a few months. But this sentence was said to Jia Lin, who seemed to be very familiar with the giant mosquito, which made them think deeply. During the 6 months of getting along, they heard from several conversations with Jia Lin that this little girl thought that the giant mosquito was always just one. Her argument is the same as that of some giant mosquito enthusiasts on the internet in the past. If this is the case, then if you go through the growth process of this big mosquito in your mind, you will find that in just over half a year, it has grown from a mosquito that was only a dozen centimeters in size when it first appeared on TV to now a 10-meter huge monster. This kind of growth rate will drive biologists all over the world crazy. Because this is not biological at all. It is anti-biological and anti-science. This is simply terrifying, and he seems to be continuing to grow. If this continues, how far can he grow in the future? Boom boom. Just when everyone was thinking, another huge explosion sounded in the forest over there. That was the last metal monster. After finding that it could not cause any harm to the big mosquito, it self-destructed before Jia Yan got close. But the result of his self-destruction was still no gain, it just made the mosquito's body look bluer in the firelight. Boom 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 boom. The flames dispersed. The giant mosquito stands proudly in the forest that has become a scorched earth. Surrounding him were trees that had fallen to the ground, their bodies all burned or blown into the distance. Raging flames burned everywhere, and all the soil and rocks on the ground were burned until they turned almost as red as lava. The center of the two explosions was a huge explosion crater with a diameter of 20 meters. This means that the power of the two explosions reached the level of a huge bomb, even more powerful than some missiles. But in the empty place, the intact figure of the big mosquito stood there intact. He had clearly been affected by the power of the explosion, but there was still nothing strange about his body. Only the surface of the body is a little blue, giving this large, dark mosquito a touch of dreamy color. As if aware that there was no threat nearby, the 10-meter-long body of the giant mosquito slowly walked towards the place where the crowd gathered. Everyone feels tremendous pressure. In the face of this giant mosquito that violates biology, physics, gravity, and seems to overturn all human science, which human being will not feel pressure? He is so powerful. There were already more than 50 humans gathered near the Geo family. The other people seemed to have been killed or seriously injured in the previous battle and were unable to gather together at this time. Rather than gathering around the Geo family, it's better to gather around the two killers. These people looked worriedly at the approaching supergiant mosquito. Looking up at the giant mosquito, everyone could see the hard as iron exoskeleton on its body and its compound eyes filled with the luster of wisdom. They have no doubt that this big mosquito can easily kill all the humans here. But their worries are unnecessary. Although Jia Yan would not be so good to humans that he would go out of his way to help them, at least he would not kill humans without any reason. Besides, these humans may have been his family's neighbors for half a year. Seeing Jia Yan approaching, Jia Lin almost wanted to step forward, but Jia's father quietly pulled her from behind, causing the girl to react. With so many people watching, she'd better not get too close to the giant mosquito. For the big mosquito thing, go to Shiyuan. If others find out that they are related to the giant mosquito, it may be a matter of dispute in the future. Jia Yan looked at the performance of his family below and felt a little confident. His huge body walked to a place only about 5 meters away from these humans, and his huge mouthparts almost touched the tops of some people's heads. The luster in the compound eyes has an elusive sparkle. Some people still have weapons in their hands, and they all hold onto their weapons tightly. If this big mosquito makes any move, they will definitely shoot. Even if it can't cause harm to the big mosquito, it must at least cause him pain. Of course, Jia Yan won't hurt them. Even if he does, the guns in their hands are no different from tickling mosquitoes. Even metal monsters, in the eyes of the big mosquito, are not much different from toys. Guns that these metal monsters cannot deal with are not as good as toys. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 321. Just when the atmosphere became tense, a loud, deep male voice sounded in this forest area. Humans, go back. I will protect this village from now on. This male voice, to the ears of unsuspecting humans, is simply an extremely shocking sound. To say that it was sent by humans is simply impossible. No human being can produce such a loud sound. It even sounded like a voice, but those difficult words did not sound like air vibrations caused by the principle of throat vocalization, but a way that they could not understand, making the entire air vibrate. Well, according to the meaning of the words, everyone was shocked. This sound was actually made by the giant mosquito monster standing in front of them. Before those people could respond, the young man wearing glasses stepped out seemingly calmly and bowed respectfully to the giant mosquito in front of him in a pious manner. Thanks for your help. Jia Yan nodded lightly, and then spread his wings. Everyone felt the blow of the huge hurricane. After that, they saw that huge body, under their gaze, slowly flying up and gradually disappearing into the distant night sky. Only now did they react. This extremely powerful mosquito seemed to have said before that he would protect their village. The giant mosquito wants to protect their village. This is simply the most bizarre thing in the world. So none of these human beings know what expressions to use when facing this fact. Only the two killers and the Geo family know the current situation, but it is impossible for them to tell what happened. They all feel a little unreal at this time, although they know that the giant mosquito may help them, but I didn't expect that this help would actually be direct protection. So none of them knew what they were feeling at this time. Only the two killers were familiar with many people present. They must speak out now. These people. All of them are people in that village who have a good relationship with the two killers. They are the only people in the whole village. Get their protection and escape together in a combat team. But no one expected that those metal monsters would keep biting them, so there were many casualties in the team. Compared with other people, it is not much less. On the contrary, more. Let's go back, Dr. Chen, there are so many wounded. I'll trouble you later. Young man wearing glasses at this time said directly. Everyone was helpless. At this time, no one said they didn't believe in the big mosquito. As far as they were concerned, there is no other place to go. In desperation, these people, together with the Jia family members, followed the two killers and walked back towards the place that was mostly in ruins. Jia Yan was in the sky, watching the scene below. His body had flown to a place at least 2 kilometers above the earth. Several thousand meters high in the sky, his figure had merged into the night. Ordinary people can't see it at all. Jia Yan was at such a high place, looking at the scenery below. The earth has been destroyed to a great extent. The attack power of these metal monsters is completely beyond that of humans. Moreover, they have no awareness of protecting the environment, so not only the humans on the earth, but also the forests, other animals, and the like, also in this situation, was massively destroyed and massacred by metal monsters. Jia Yan began to fly around near this mountain forest. When he returned to Earth, he never thought about killing the metal monster. He knows that he is not strong enough to do such a thing. He can easily kill 1, 2, or even hundreds of metal monsters, but when faced with tens of thousands of metal monsters, his combat effectiveness pales in comparison. It is conservatively estimated that there are millions of metal monsters on the planet. With so many metal monsters, even if they were placed there for Jia Yan to kill, he would probably not be able to kill them all until his hands were weak. And Jia Yan has never thought about really helping humans to this extent. In the war between humans and metal monsters, he can only protect the safety of his family, and he won't care so much about other things. Jia Yan continued to fly. His speed did not expand, but remained at 800 or 900 kilometers per hour, cruising at low altitude in this environment. The temperature of the surrounding air has reached more than 10 degrees below zero. At this time, Jia Yan no longer feels anything. His temperature resistance has reached an extremely terrifying level during the mutation in the universe. Now this temperature is far from reaching a level that he cannot bear. He has really become stronger. I actually have another biggest threat on Earth. That's the huge red lasers of the metal monsters. While Jia Yan inspected the place below, he made his own arrangement of the things he was currently afraid of. The most powerful thing in the metal monster's hand is the red laser. If there is anything on this earth that can immediately threaten his life, it is only this laser. But I can guess that this metal monster is not that smart. They can't be as smart as humans. In the past, when they used red lasers, there were traces of them. That was the existence of the threat they considered. Or some large human cities. Now they have no command, and the so-called representative of the Asta people has died over Neptune. In this case, the independent combat effectiveness of the metal monsters should be greatly reduced. From my previous observations, it seems that there weren't many light attacks during the few months I left. When Jia Yan piloted the aircraft, he did not really fly out after arriving on the Earth. When he was looking for the direction of China, he had a rough look at the situation on the ground. There were many red rays on the ground after they attacked the big city, but this scene did not reappear. That time Washington was attacked by red rays, and then the whole city was completely annihilated. Shanghai City also looks like it after being attacked by the metal monster's red light, but the general appearance of the city is still preserved. This shows that the metal monster's red light is definitely not as powerful as before. Therefore, Jia Yan estimated that after the Austro representative died, the metal monsters had lower authority, or simply did not have so much war wisdom to launch the maximum intensity red light attack. Then this matter will be easier to handle. Jia Yan can be a little less concerned about the attack of red light and fight in the earth. Even if the red light attacks, Jia Yan has some countermeasures. When he was not mutated before, he once escaped an attack from a red light just before leaving the earth. Although there was a lot of luck involved in that avoidance, after that, Jia Yan kept thinking about the feeling of vigilance that occurred in his body at that time. He originally thought it was just things like luck even appeared over Neptune in the subsequent battles in the universe. So Jia Yan knew that his biological level had reached a level where his body could become alert due to the surrounding environment. In fact, this thing sounds complicated and mysterious, but the principle is not that complicated. That is, during long battles, Jia Yan needs to be constantly vigilant about dangers, so during several evolutions of his body, he has some more ways to take advantage of environmental factors to make himself more survivable. Through the body's senses, such as eyes, temperature sensing in exoskeletons, and feeling in antennae. When these organs are brought together, his overall feeling of vigilance will appear. That time he happened to avoid the huge red light. Although it relied on a little luck, these organs of his were also of great help. First, the many compound eyes refracted the wonderful distortion of light from the red laser, and then refracted to his brain nerves, giving his body a sense of danger. At that time, he would naturally have a huge reactions appear to avoid danger to the greatest extent.